Tonight, you need a shave. But the chair is empty, the scissors untouched, and the barber refuses to speak because it's Tuesday. It seemed like a simple errand. Your boots were dry. Your coin purse had exactly enough for a trim and possibly a peppermint lozenge. You'd even skipped breakfast, thinking it best to get your neck scraped before the bread hardened. You step into the barber shop with soft confidence. But something is wrong. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. The room is too still. No kettle hissing. No clatter of razors. No smell of warm towels and overboiled herbs. Just the barber, standing near the window, motionless, staring not at you, but at the calendar nailed crookedly to the wall. You clear your throat. Good morning. He flinches, like the words hit him with a broomstick. He turns slowly, eyes bloodshot, apron stained with what you hope is ink, and in a whisper he says, "It's Tuesday." You nod, as if that explains anything. Yes, and I've got a... He raises a hand, shakes his head, then walks behind the counter and locks the drawer where the scissors sleep. Locks it twice, then mumbles something into a sprig of rosemary. You stand there, tittering, unshaved, deeply confused. This isn't your first time in a medieval town. You've seen bread priced by moon phase. You've watched a goat serve as both witness and defense lawyer. You've even seen someone baptize their boots. But this, a barber refusing to trim on a weekday, this is new. And it smells like fear. You sit anyway, just to test the energy. The chair creaks like it remembers trauma. You glance at the mirror. It's been covered with a cloth, lacy one. You feel judged. Barbers not open on Tuesdays? The barber turns, pale and sweaty. He wipes his hands, not that they're wet, and says, "We were, once, before the incident." You wait. You want to ask more, but he's already busy, boiling something in a tin mug and chanting at the kettle. You decide to wait. Maybe someone else will explain. They do. Old Myra. She arrives moments later, hobbling on boots that should have been retired when the monastery was built. She sees you in the chair and says, "Oh ho, brave soul." You try to smile. She walks up to the barber and whispers something. He whispers back. Then they both look at you, like you've sat on a haunted cushion. "You don't know, do you?" she asks. You shake your head. She sighs, then begins. "It was 15 years ago, on a day just like this. Rainy, but trying to pretend it wasn't. A Tuesday, of course. Always a Tuesday." She settles into the customer stool, removes a wrapped hard candy from her sleeve, pops it into her mouth like punctuation. A nobleman came in. Tall, arrogant, smelled like figs and regret. He wanted a trim before his duel. You nod, as one does. She continued. The barber, Harold back then, not this twitchy one, sharpened his blade. Fresh steel, new strop. Real pride in his work. She leans forward. But something went wrong. Jane? Wrong. He trimmed the left side too short. Just a hair off. The nobleman noticed. Challenged Harold to a duel instead. You blink. The barber fought? Didn't need to. The nobleman tripped over the hot towel basin and impaled himself on a peppermint hook. A pause. You blink again. Yeah, exactly. Since then, every Tuesday, no scissors, no razors, no blades of any kind. He leans back, satisfied. The barber crosses himself, then throws a towel over the kettle like he's worried it heard the story. You sit in silence. The air is thick with mint and superstition. You consider your options. Stay unshaven? Risk social ridicule? Attempt the unthinkable? Cut it yourself? You glance at the mirror again. Still covered. Still judging. And in that moment you understand something. Tuesdays aren't just days. In towns like this, where bread can bear grudges and spoons have backstories, Tuesdays are thresholds. They're places where routine trembles, where scissors hesitate, where even memory grows cautious. You rise from the chair, nod to the barber, thank Myra, and walk back out into the morning, cheeks still unshorn but now strangely respected. Because here, knowing when not to be trimmed is as sacred as the trim itself. You spend the rest of Tuesday in a mild state of follicular limbo. Your neck itches. Your sideburns have begun to rebel. And every time you pass a reflective surface, puddle, shield, overly polished loaf of bread, you're reminded that you are only half the person you could be, hair-wise. You endure, because Tuesday, as you've learned, is no ordinary weekday. Not in this town, and certainly not inside the barber shop, where sharp things go to sleep and mirrors hide their faces. By Wednesday morning, the mood has changed. The barber shop is open, the mirror uncovered, the scissors, polished, glinting, unnervingly confident, are laid out like holy relics. The barber greets you with a nod, less twitchy, slightly apologetic, still not wearing shoes. You're back, he says. You're brave. He shrugs. You've never considered yourself brave, but you do have an itch behind your left ear that could topple empires. You sit. The chair creaks less today. The mirror shows your face again, slightly uneven, slightly wiser, definitely sleep-deprived. The barber begins his ritual. Wash hands, sharpen blades, mumble to the rosemary sprig, still tied above the door, stare at your sideburns with grim reverence. Then he speaks. I can trim you now, but you should know the rules. You raise an eyebrow. There are haircut rules. He nods, solemnly, and then begins. Rule 1. Never look directly at the scissors. They work better when unobserved. Rule 2. Don't speak while the nape is being trimmed. Words carry weight, and necks are vulnerable. If a raven lands on the windowsill during your cut, stop everything. Immediately, you nod slowly. Somehow this all makes sense. At least here, he begins. Slow strokes, even lines. The kind of precision that only comes from experience and deep generational trauma. He trims in silence, only the sound of steel against hair and the occasional sigh of someone confronting their own reflection. Then he says it, casually, quietly, but it lands like a book dropped in soup. It wasn't just the nobleman. You pause. Sorry? He lowers the scissors. After him, more things happened. On Tuesdays. You swallow. Like what? He walks to the drawer, pulls out a small, wrinkled parchment, unfolds it, reveals a list, scrawled in looping, hesitant handwriting. Henrietta's eyebrows vanished. Tuesday, Humble exploded. Tuesday. Walter bled for 27 minutes, said ouch in Latin. Tuesday. Mirror cracked, no reflection. Tuesday. Customer asked for a fashionable cut and spontaneously combusted. Bowl of shaving foam became sentient. Briefly. Tuesday. You stare at the list. It's not long, but it's specific. Very specific. You glance at the scissors. Still, shiny, innocent. But now, suspicious. The barber folds the list, places it back in the drawer, then resumes trimming like nothing happened. You sit still, very still, suddenly aware that the nape of your neck is a sacred site. He finishes with a soft dusting of powder that smells like licorice and fear. You glance in the mirror. It's perfect, balanced, elegant, untroubled by supernatural interference. You exhale and say, "So, Wednesdays are safe?" He nods. Mostly. Mostly. He smiles. Only if you tip. You do. Generously. Outside, the street is warm with sun and the smell of overripe cheese. You feel lighter, not just on your head, in your soul. You survived a medieval barbershop on the day after Tuesday, and somehow that feels like a victory, a small one. But in this town, even small victories are trimmed with care. The next few days pass quietly. Your haircut holds. The townspeople seem to trust you more, as if enduring a postponed shave has elevated your social standing. You're invited to sit closer to fires, given the slightly fresher bread, allowed to pet the nicer goats. Even Myra nods respectfully when she passes you in the square, muttering something about a scalp that knows restraint. You begin to wonder, how far does the fear of Tuesday go? Is it just this barber, this town, or is it something wider? A quiet superstition that stretches across dusty roads and mossy stone villages, whispered from shears to scissors to soul. You decide to investigate, because after all, nothing says restful bedtime story quite like medieval haircut conspiracies. You begin at the archives, not grand ones. This is a town of small ink and large rumors. The archives are really a cupboard in the back of the scribe's home, filled with scrolls that smell like pickled garlic and badly made decisions. The scribe is not helpful. He wears glasses he doesn't need and corrects your Latin even when you speak in plain common. But eventually you find something. A scroll, wrapped in hair, literal hair. You untie it carefully. Inside, a record from 1287, written in shaky hand, annotated in red ink. The heading reads, Barbers' Council, minutes from the day of the incident. Your hands tingle. You read, let it be known that on the second day after the first rain of spring, a barber by the name of Thistle did attempt a temple trim on Sir Godwin. Said trim proceeded without incident for 47 seconds, at which point the mirror did fog unexpectedly, despite no kettle being present. Sir Godwin, looking upon his reflection, claimed to see not himself, but an older version, bald, weeping and mouthing the word Tuesday. The haircut was abandoned. Sir Godwin took to the hills and became a beekeeper. Thistle retired and opened a shop for leeches. Council agreed henceforth that no grooming shall occur on Tuesdays unless sanctioned by a priest, a widow, and at least one emotionally stable raven. You read it twice, then a third time. The language is dry, but the fear is palpable. Even centuries ago, something about Tuesday twisted the hands that held the blades. You return to the barber shop. It's Thursday now. The barber is humming. A customer is asleep in the chair, covered in warm cloth and rosemary steam. You wait. When he's done, he waves you in. You show him the scroll. He squints, then chuckles. Didn't know they wrote it down. You ask, do you believe it? He shrugs. Not at first. Thought it was just old fear. But then he trails off, then walks to the back shelf, pulls down a box, opens it. Inside, 5 tiny mirrors, all cracked, all labeled with dates, all Tuesdays. You touch one. It hums slightly. You recoil. He nods. Some days, the scissors don't want to listen. Some days, they cut too much. Some days, they whisper. You pause. Whisper what? He looks up. Tomorrow, you don't know what that means. You're not sure you want to. You leave the shop quietly, the bell above the door sounding like a question. Back in your room at the inn, you sit beside the candle, pull out your own comb, length, worn, yours. You stroke it once. It's white. It feels harmless. But for the first time, you wonder, what if even the gentlest tools remember? What if Tuesday isn't a curse, but a memory passed down the grain of wood, the bite of steel? What if every hair trimmed on the wrong day echoes louder than it should? You blow out the candle, lie down, let your head sink into the pillow, and dream faintly of scissors that blink and razors that remember. You awaken to the sound of gentle sweeping. Downstairs, the innkeeper's pushing last night's dust into today's corner. You sit up slowly, stretch, run a hand through your freshly trimmed hair. Still even, still quiet, still Tuesday adjacent. You think about leaving town. You've learnt plenty. You've had your hair cut, uncovered a cursed scroll, and acquired more superstitious anecdotes than anyone really needs. But something holds you here. Not fear, not even curiosity. Just that particular medieval feeling that the town isn't finished with you yet. You step outside. It's market day. Stalls filled with pears, wool, pottery, and a surprising number of bootlaces. You pass a woman selling garlic by the braid and another shouting enthusiastically about a pie you suspect doesn't contain pie. Then you hear it. Free haircuts. Today only, no Tuesday work guaranteed. You turn. A stall. New. Bright cloth roof. Smiling man in a green tunic, standing beside a folding chair and a basin. He sees you. Waves. You look like someone who respects symmetry. You hesitate. Approach. No Tuesday work? Swear on my shears. You glance at the sign again. A smaller one now catches your eye. Former apprentice of Thistle by way of the beekeeping Godwin. Your pulse slows. Your interest grows. You sit. The man introduces himself as Milo. Young, cheerful, surprisingly unhaunted. He combs through your hair like someone looking for secrets, then says, "You've been trimmed well." You nod. He continues, "But I can tell, you're carrying it." Carrying what? The memory of the chair, the hesitation, the mirror covered in lace. You don't answer. He grins. Everyone does. First cut after Tuesday leaves a mark. He doesn't cut. He tells stories. about barbers who gave up blades and took up poetry, about mirrors that fogged only for guilty men, about a village where everyone shaved only on full moons and had the smoothest chins in the realm. Then he tells one that stays with you. There was a woman once, barber, quiet. She shaved in silence, no mirror, no music, only on Sundays. But once, just once, she slipped. Worked on a Tuesday. What happened? She trimmed a man so well, his face changed. A whole new person. He left his wife, joined a monastery, took a vow of breath. You blink? You mean silence? No. Bread. He only speaks in crumbs now. Milo grins. You can't tell if he's joking. You're not sure he can either. He gives you a touch-up. Not much. A line here, a snip there, a whisper of lavender water at the temples. Then he leans close, whispers, Tuesdays aren't cursed. They're testing. You raise an eyebrow. Testing what? He shrugs. Whether the blade obeys you, or you obey the blade. You leave him a coin and a question. Later you wander to the edge of town. There's a hill there, flat on top. Locals call it the table. No one eats there, too windy. But people talk there, walk there, sometimes, leave things there. Today someone has left a brush. Simple, wrapped in a red ribbon. You pick it up. It hums faintly. You put it down again. Some objects prefer stillness. You sit in the grass. Watch clouds pass. Think about mirrors and barbers and ghosts made of memory. You close your eyes. Let the wind pull at your sleeves. And wonder, if I cut my hair on Tuesday, would I change? Not physically, not dramatically. Just enough to feel unfamiliar for a few days. Just enough to make soup taste different. You lie back, and somewhere in the space between the clouds and your fading thoughts, you hear a voice, soft and amused. The scissors are never cursed, just very, very honest. And then you sleep, dreamless, clean-headed, safe for now from Tuesday. You wake on the hill, your head full of wind and your sleeves full of grass. The brush is still where you left it, unmoved, unbothered, possibly watching. You sit up slowly, stretch your arms, and listen. The town below is waking. Roosters crowing at inappropriate intervals, bakers shouting things about crust, one person arguing with a goat about property lines. It's a normal day, and yet you carry Tuesday with you. You return to the inn. The innkeeper greets you with a mug of something hot and a look that says, "You've either learned something or picked up a curse. Either way, welcome back." You sip. It tastes like burned honey and soft dust. You sit near the hearth. Reach into your pocket. Pull out your comb. Still yours. Still plain. Still safe. You begin to brush. Softly, evenly, like you've been doing it your whole life, and maybe in some small way you have. Later you wander. No destination. Just streets. Corners. People selling more garlic than anyone could possibly need. You pass a tailor who hums to their thread. A fishmonger arguing with a herring. A child drawing circles in chalk and calling them maps for spirits. Everything is gently strange, exactly as it should be. Then you see it. A door. Narrow, wooden, with a sign above it, carved in a language you don't recognize but somehow understand. Scissors honored here. You knock. The door opens. Inside is not a shop. Not quite. It's a room. Small, warm, lined wall to wall with hair, braids, locks, coils, each pinned to the wall with little brass tags. Names, dates, occasions, a museum of memory. And in the center, a woman sits. She wears a black apron and a necklace made of tiny combs. Her eyes are sharp, not unkind, but sharp. She gestures. You enter. She speaks without introduction. You've touched Tuesday. You pause. Then nod. Briefly. That's enough. She stands, moves to a shelf, takes down a small box. Inside, a pair of scissors unlike any you've seen. Old, yes, but delicate. Etched with runes that look like they were written in mid-sneeze. She hands them to you. But you hesitate. On what? She gestures. Yourself. You raise the scissors. Feel the weight. Perfectly balanced, as if designed for a hand that asks questions before it cuts. You lift a strand near your temple. Or then snip. Soft. Like slicing through a whisper. The room doesn't change, but something in you does. A quiet little shift, like a breath you didn't know you were holding, releasing. She smiles. Good. You listened. To what? She taps her chest. Not here. Then your head. Here. You hand the scissors back. She shakes her head. They're yours now, until Tuesday takes them. You blink. That's generous. She shrugs. No, I just don't want them anymore. You leave the room in a daze. The scissors tucked safely in your satchel. You walk slowly. Avoid puddles. Avoid mirrors. Return to the inn and sit near the fire. Nara has returned. She glances at you, raises an eyebrow. You have that look. What look? The look of someone who's about to tell me something very strange in a very calm voice. You grin. I met a woman who collects hair. She doesn't flinch. Ada says, Of course you did. You pull out the scissors. Show her. She leans close, then whispers. They hum. You nod. You felt it too. That night, you both eat quietly. Red. Stew. A small jar of something neither of you can identify, but agree tastes like ambitious plums. Then you light a candle, and with the new scissors in hand, you trim one thread from Nara's sleeve. Not because it's frayed, just because it's ready. The next morning feels different. You wake up with no alarm, no rooster, no bread cart argument, just a sense of precision, as though every thread in your tunic decided overnight to lie a little flatter, as though the world briefly respects alignment. You reach for the scissors. They don't hum, not quite, but they feel aware, not of you, but of their task. You and Nara walk together down a quiet street with houses that lean slightly east and windows that squint. She carries a notebook. You carry the scissors. Well, protected, heavy in the way knowledge sometimes is. She says, Have you thought about what you'll use them for? You shrug. I don't think I'd decide. I think the haircut decides. She nods. She understands things like that. By midday, the two of you reach the edge of town. where the road splits into four, each one marked with a weathered post. To the bakers, to the bells, to the bones, to the boom. You glance at each. Nora tilts her head. To the bones? You nod. Seems right. The path narrows, turns rocky. You pass dry trees, twisted, like they've been listening too long. The sun feels sharp, not hot, just exact. Then, ahead, you see it, meant, middle-aged, barefoot, wearing a robe tied with a rope that's been knotted so many times it looks like a confession. He's seated on a stool, holding a mirror, staring into it. You approach slowly. He doesn't move, just watches his own reflection, then says without turning, "You have them." You pause. "The scissors?" "No, the hands." You blink. They nod. He continues, "I used to be a monk. I used to be bald. I used to cut hair as penance. Now, I grow it as memory." He lowers the mirror. His hair is long, beautiful, in a way that only truly quiet things can be. He stands, turns to face you, smiles gently, uncut. You raise the scissors. They feel ready. You take a step forward, then stop. "Where?" He points not at his hair, but at his shoulder. A single strand caught in a knot near the robe's collar. You reach out. "Smith." The sound is soft. The wind changes direction. Somewhere nearby, a bird makes a decision. He sighs, smiles again. You trim regret. Then he turns, walks back into the trees, and vanishes. Nora writes furiously in her notebook. "What did we just do?" You shrug. "But the scissors are warmer now, and quieter." You return to town as the sun begins to lean westward. A boy stops you on the road. He's holding a cat that does not wish to be held. He says, "You the haircut person?" You nod, cautiously. "My dad's beard is angry. He won't admit it, but I think you can help." You look at the cat. It hisses. You follow the boy anyway. The house is crooked. The air smells like onions and old confidence. The man, his father, has a beard like a prophecy gone sideways. He frowns as you enter. "I didn't ask for help." You nod. "Neither did your beard." Nara stays outside, gives you space. You unwrap the scissors. They hum, not loud, not proud, just enough to say, "We're listening." You trim, carefully, one curl at a time. The man doesn't speak. He just stares at the wall. When you finish, he reaches up, touches his face, exhales. "I think I loved her more than she loved me." You don't reply. You just hand him a small cloth to wipe away the loose hairs. Then you leave. Back on the street, Nora says nothing. She doesn't need to. She sees the look on your face, the one that says you carried something out with you that didn't belong to you. She hands you a piece of dried apple. You chew in silence. That night, you sit by the window, scissors beside you, moon high, town quiet, and you wonder, gently, if maybe these blades don't cut hair at all. Maybe they just cut what lingers too long. The next morning, you find a note tucked beneath your door. No name, no wax seal, just 2 words, written in careful ink. The Weaver map, drawn by someone who either knows the hills by heart or never learned how maps are supposed to work. You fold it, look at it, look out the window. The sky is thick with low clouds, the color of warm pewter. Today feels like a day for loose ends. You and Nara walk in silence. She doesn't ask where you're going. She just follows. The air smells like wet wool and tea that's steeped too long. You follow the map's odd directions, past the stone that hums in the rain, left at the stump with 3 notches, uphill until the trees start whispering your name. You arrive at a cottage nestled between 2 leaning oaks. The sign above the door reads, Thread and Theory. Inside, the air is dense with yawn, colors everywhere, hanging from beams, stacked in baskets, woven into impossible patterns along the walls. At the center of the room, a loom the size of a dining table, and behind it, a woman with a scarf wrapped so many times around her head it could double as armor. She doesn't look up, just says, "You're late, sit." You sit. Nara perches beside a shelf labeled Unruly Skeins. The woman weaves, silently, then speaks. "You've been cutting, haven't you?" You pause. "Only what needed cutting." She snorts. "Everyone says that before they shear a promise or prune a story too soon." You shift in your chair. The scissors in your satchel feel cautious. She stops weaving, turns, eyes sharp as pins. "Show me." You place the scissors on the table. She doesn't touch them. She just looks, long enough that the room feels smaller. Then she reaches beneath the loom and pulls out a bundle wrapped in dark cloth, sets it beside yours. He unwraps it. Inside, another pair of scissors, older, blunter, marked with tiny carved circles. These were mine. You lean in. They hum, faintly, like a sigh that got lost and found itself again. "They don't cut anymore," she says. "Not hair, not thread, not even lies." Lies? Scissors used to do that. Snip a fib clean in half. Very useful during marriage negotiations. You're not sure if she's joking. You don't ask. She reaches for yours. He lifts them gently, nods. Bees are still listening. That's rare. Then she hands them back, just as gently. She returns to the loom, weaves a few quiet rows, then says, "Let me show you something." You follow her outside, to the back of the cottage. There, hanging on a long line between 2 trees, are braids. Dozens, hundreds, each one tagged with a name and a word. Ada, grief, tome adult, Lisette, guilt, you pending. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. "I don't cut them. I hold them until they're ready." You ask, "Ready for what?" She looks at you. "To be lighter." You stand there a long time, looking at the line. You spot one near the end. Silver, labeled Tuesday. You don't ask. You just know. Back inside, she gives you a cup of something bitter and hot. You sip, try not to wince. She watches you. The scissors chose you. But be careful. Of what? Of assuming you're always right. Sometimes the knot is part of the design. You leave with a head full of wool and warnings. Nara walks quietly beside you. Eventually, she says, "I liked her." You nod. "Me too." She adds, "But if she ever stares at me like that again, I'm jumping in a river." For that night, back at the inn, you unpack the scissors, Lay them on the table. They don't rest, and you begin to understand. These aren't tools, they're witnesses, and they're waiting for the next cut, for the next thread, for the next piece of a story that no longer fits. It's the kind of morning where nothing spills, the mug holds steady, the floorboards creak politely. Even the wind outside sounds like it's whispering, "Not today." You sit at your usual spot in the inn, the scissors beside your bread, wrapped, but unmistakably present. You're not advertising them, but people notice. A boy delivering eggs slows at your table. A laundress nods, with the air of someone who once had her apron mended by moonlight. The town knows, not what you are, but what you carry. Nara joins you with 2 scrolls and a wedge of cheese she refers to as honest but challenging. She sets the scrolls down, mourns a list of local barbers. The other isn't labeled. You open the second. Inside, a map of hairlines, drawn meticulously, some labeled with names, others with seasons, one with the phrase, "He lied, then receded." You both stare, then agree not to discuss it before breakfast. Today's mission is a simple one. A woman on the edge of town has requested your presence. No details, just a note, written in ink the color of candle ash. When ready, come to the blue house with the sunflower door. I need unburdening. Unburdening is a word that clings. You gather your things. Nara wraps the cheese like it's been cursed and follows. The house is easy to find, painted blue like someone tried to remember the sky from memory. The door is covered in sunflowers, real ones dried and replaced, season after season. You knock. It opens. The woman inside is tall, wrapped in layers, eyes like rain that remembers lightning. She gestures you in. No words, just the soft creak of consent. The house is quiet, but not empty. It's filled with sound memory, the kind that lives in fabrics and floorboards. You can hear laughter that left years ago, footsteps from someone who still hasn't returned. The air holds everything. She sits at a small stool, unwraps her hair. It falls like curtain silk, thick, silver, woven with strands of something darker than gray. You understand at once. This isn't about style. This is about weight. You don't ask. You simply kneel. Unwrap the scissors. Hold them. Wait. She closes her eyes. Whispers. Just take what no longer remembers him. You pause. Then begin. You work slowly, carefully, letting the scissors listen, letting the strands guide you. Some resist, not angrily but protectively. Others fall willingly, like memories that have already said goodbye. You don't speak, but as the hair drops, she exhales, not all at once, but in layers, like grief being folded and put away. When you finish, you place the fallen strands in a bowl of salt water she's prepared. They float for a moment and sink like secrets forgiven. She opens her eyes, smiles, touches the side of her head. Lighter. You nod. Yes. Then you leave, without payment, only thanks. Some cuts are beyond coin. Nara doesn't speak until you're halfway back. Then she says, "You're not a barber anymore." He shrugged. "Maybe I never was." She nods. Or maybe barbers always were something else. You spend the rest of the day quietly polishing the blades, tightening the hinge, sketching strange symbols that you've never seen but somehow remember. You fall asleep before the candle burns out, and in your dreams the scissors float midair, not cutting, just turning, as if waiting. Your turn? The next morning, you find a spool of thread on your windowsill. You ask no one, but you take it anyway. Because here, in this town stitched with secrets and whispers, even thread knows where it's supposed to go. Downstairs, Nera is already seated. Tea steaming, notebook open, hair tied back with something that might have once been a bookmark. She doesn't look up. Another visit today. Town cobbler. She flips a page, claims his tools are cursed. You pause. The tracks. The cobbler's shop is narrow and dim, the smell of leather almost thick enough to chew. The man greets you with a nervous smile and a boot in his hand. It's not the boots, he says. It's the laces. You raise an eyebrow. He gestures to a corner. There, hanging like dried fruit on hooks, are hair laces, thin braids used once upon a time for noble boots, stitched by hand from the locks of lovers, rivals, and, occasionally, enemies. People keep bringing them in, he says. I fix the boots. The laces undo themselves. He looks at you, desperate. It's tired. A man afraid of knots that whisper back. Can you trim them? Just the memory? Not the craftsman. You nod. You lay the laces on the table. Some fume faintly. One sighs. Another seems to twitch, as if remembering a foot it didn't like. You unwrap your scissors. The cobbler flinches. You smile. Begin. You don't cut the laces. You prune them. A small clip near the fray, a single snip at a tangled root, tiny gestures of release. You whisper as you go, not words, just tone, letting the scissors translate. They seem to understand. When you're done, the laces hang still, quiet, unhaunted. The cobbler watches them and takes a cautious step forward. One lace curls gently, not in threat, but in rest. He exhales, then hands you something wrapped in velvet. My thanks. You open it later. Inside, a thimble, polished bone, engraved with a spiral. It fits your thumb perfectly. Back at the inn, you find a letter waiting. No name, just a stamped seal, a pair of shears crossed over a candle. You break it. Inside the words, if the blade still sings, come to the northern grove by the edge of the rye fields. Before the next Tuesday, we need a trim. Capital T. Nera reads it, then says, you're being invited. Our guild, or a gathering, or maybe just a very serious haircut. You can say, do we go? She smiles. Obviously, that evening, as the candle burns low, you lay out everything. The scissors, the thimble, the thread, the names you've trimmed, the memories you've clipped. You don't feel powerful, just precise. And in this world, sometimes precision is what keeps the dark from growing too wild. Sleep comes gently, and in your dreams, someone is braiding light, carefully, rhythmically, then turning to you with scissors made of moonlight. The northern grove doesn't appear on any map. Even Nara's most scribbled upon scroll just shows a blank patch labeled, "Here there be turnips." But the note was clear, so you walk past the rye fields where the wind plays in the stalks like a lazy harpist, past the fence that hums when touched, past the scarecrow that seems to change hats when you're not looking, and finally into the trees. The grove is quiet, not silent, just deliberate. Even the birds seem to sing in lowercase. There's a clearing at the center, circled by stumps worn smooth from stories. And seated on those stumps are 4 people. They look ordinary, which is to say, one wears a cloak stitched from thread no longer dyed. One has scissors looped into their belt like musical notes. One is polishing a blade with what might be a prayer, and one is holding a cup of tea with steam rising in the shape of a question mark. You don't speak, neither do they. You simply approach. Take the one empty stump. The cup holder nods. You've arrived. Nara remains standing. They nod to her too. Shimi observes. Some stories require a witness. The one with the musical scissors speaks next. We are the Order of the Measured Edge. You blink. They continue. We do not cut to chain. We cut to remember what must stay. The one with the polished blade adds. Hair. Thread. Cord. All of it holds weight. Sometimes too much. Sometimes just enough. Then they look at you. You carry a blade that listens. But does it speak? You unwrap your scissors. Place them on your lap. They do not hum. They simply rest. The cloaked one leans forward. Will you demonstrate? You nod. And you reach into your pouch. Pull out the red thread from your windowsill. Still nodded. Is still asking. You hold it up. The thread drops. And as it falls, the wind changes direction. Only briefly, but just enough for everyone to notice. The cloaked one smiles. Yes, that will do. The tea drinker pours a second cup, hands it to you. You do. It tastes like mint and old stories. They speak again. We meet only when the calendar turns wrong, when days blur, when tools forget their purpose. What happened on that Tuesday, the first Tuesday, was not a mistake. You listen. They go on. It was an undoing of time, of rhythm, of the trust between scalp and blade. A nobleman died. Barber's hand slipped, or didn't. No one knows. But ever since, Tuesdays test us. They ask, do you cut for yourself or for the moment? You think of the cracked mirrors, the salt bowl, the woman with the sunflower door, the braid labeled Tuesday. It all fits uncomfortably, like a cloak inherited from someone taller and more worried. The order stands, one by one. Then they turn to you, hold out a box. Inside, a second pair of scissors, older, brass, scoured. They say, these are the first pair. They do not cut. They remember. You take them. Feel their weight, heavier than steel, lighter than guilt. They nod, and to leave. No farewell, just quiet footsteps into deeper woods. Only the tea drinker lingers. When Tuesday comes again, and it will, use the first pair, then she's gone. You and Nara sit in the empty grove. She looks at you. How do you feel? You glance at both pairs of scissors in your lap, like a barber, like a librarian, like someone who now owns too many blades. She grins. Tuesday's coming. You both look at the sky. and for the first time in days, it's completely still. Tuesday begins quietly. The sky is unconvincingly blue, like it's trying too hard. The air smells faintly of ash and rosemary. The bakery is closed without explanation. The cats are hiding. Even the inn's floorboards creak. Off tempo. You dress slowly, carefully, buttoning each loop like a ritual. You wrap the scissors, both pairs, in cloth, then in silence. Nara watches from the window. She doesn't speak. Not yet. Tuesdays prefer stillness. You step into the street. It's not empty, but no one lingers. People walk quickly, faces downward, as if the clouds might read their thoughts. A bard tunes his lute under his breath but plays no song. The fountain in the square has stopped flowing. You feel watched, not by eyes, but by possibility. You reach the barber shop, the original one, the one with the rosemary above the door and the mirror that once wore lace. It's open. The barber, older now somehow, is inside, waiting. He nods. It's Tuesday. You nod back. I know. He gestures. The chair creaks like a memory. You sit. The room is lit by one candle. No daylight, no kettle, no music. Just you, the barber, and the feeling of a blade somewhere in the room whispering, "Be sure." You unwrap the first pair, the remembering scissors, place them on your lap. The barber glances at them. His eyes widen, then soften. I never thought I'd see them again. You ask, "Do you want the cut?" He shakes his head. "Well, I want the memory." He stands behind you, places his hands on your shoulders. Steady. You pick up the first pair. Open them. They don't resist. You hold them near your temple. Wait. They guide you, not to hair, but to a thought, a single strand of belief that no longer serves. You clip it. There's no sound, but the mirror sighs. You blink. Look at your reflection. No difference. And yet, your scalp feels cooler, your chest lighter. The barber speaks. You cut the superstition, and not the truth. That's the way. He takes the scissors, holds them to his heart, then places them gently back in your satchel. You leave the shop, step outside. The clouds haven't moved, but the air feels kinder. People glance up. The bard plays a note. Just one, but it lands like forgiveness. Nara meets you at the corner, hands you a pair. You look taller when you walked out. You smile. It was just the chair. She grins. Was it? You walk together to the field where the rye sways without wind. Sit in the grass, eat in silence, and watch as a child down the road begins drawing circles in the dirt again. Only this time they're smiling. You glance at the sky. Still Tuesday, but no longer trembling. The following morning feels like a world exhaling. The baker opens early. The bread is unusually warm, almost flirtatious. Children dare to shout again. The cats stretch in the sun like they've just been pardoned. Even the bell in the town square rings a little rounder. You and Nara eat breakfast in the garden behind the inn. The rosemary is in bloom. The air smells like soft flower and possibility. You sip your tea and realize something quietly. We made it through a Tuesday. She nods. What now? You glance at the scissors, resting inside a folded linen napkin between you. They are still, not sleeping, just resting, like dogs who've finally herded all the ghosts. And now we travel, where, you shrug, wherever things feel tangled. By midday your bags are packed. The innkeeper hands you a bundle, wrapped in waxed cloth. For the road, he says. And, thank you. You didn't trim me, but I feel better anyway. You nod. Sometimes it's not about the cut. It's about being near someone who knows when not to reach for the shears. You pass the scarecrow again. It's changed hats once more, now wearing something suspiciously like Nera's old scarf. She narrows her eyes. I never trusted him. The road south winds gently. The sun is polite. The hills look recently brushed. You talk about anything but scissors. Instead, the proper way to salt a potato. The ethics of musical doorbells. Whether clouds have memories or just good timing. Nara tells a story about a woman who used to comb her hair before every meal, not to look good, but to listen better. You believe it? Around dusk, you arrive at a village shaped like a question mark. Every path loops back, every door opens inward. They greet you like relatives not seen since last harvest. They ask no questions. Just offer stew, bread, and a place by the fire. You accept. That night, as stars gather with deliberate slowness, a woman approaches your seat. Hands like woven maps, is the color of worn parchment. She doesn't introduce herself, just sits, then says, "My sister passed last spring, but her braid won't loosen." You nod. She unwraps a cloth from her pocket. Inside, a length of thick, dark braid bound with silver thread. It pulses faintly. Not magic, just memory refusing to release. You unwrap the second pair, the ones that cut. You hold them gently, not ready to use them. Instead, you ask, was she ready? The woman closes her eyes, then opens them again. You died during a sentence. What kind? The kind you finish later? You nod. You've met that kind before. You lift the braid. Trace your fingers along the thread. Wait. You wait longer. Then, a moment so small it could be missed. A sigh. From the braid. You snip. Just once. A strand of silver thread falls. The rest untwines. Like a ribbon released by time itself. The woman smiles. Not with her mouth. With her shoulders. With her breath. With her decision to stay seated a little longer. She says, "Thank you." She would have liked you. She hated haircuts. You grin. Me too. That night, you dream of stairs made of braids, leading upward into a sky shaped like a mirror. At the top, a chair, empty, but warm, waiting for someone who knew when not to cut. You wake to the sound of combs tapping against ceramic bowls. Gently, rhythmically, like spoons being trained to listen. Nara is already up, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sorting strands of thread and hair into tiny labeled jars. Organization is a form of spell work, she says without looking up. You nod. You know. She sets aside a silver jar labeled Maybe, then hands you a folded note tied with waxed twine. No signature, just a seal of 2 overlapping braids and a short line beneath. We have a knot that sings. You leave within the hour. The road curves like a question someone's afraid to ask. Past trees bent with wind wisdom, past a fence where every post is carved with a name. Past a signpost pointing in 4 directions, none of them labeled here. And then a house made of woven willow, soft, breathing. You knock. The door opens before your knuckles land. Inside, it smells like linen and lullabies. A man stands at the far wall, back turned. Before him, a chair. In the chair, a girl, young, still, eyes closed, a braid wrapped around her head once, twice, 7 times. Tight, not cruel, just insistent. The man turns. His eyes are tired, in the way old music gets tired. She hums in her sleep, he says. But the braid changes the tune. You step forward, unwrap your scissors, let them rest in your hand. You speak to the man gently. Do you want it undone? He doesn't answer. The girl does, eyes still closed. Not all of it, just the part that remembers the argument. You approach. The braid pulses faintly. There's no magic here, not the loud kind. Just a memory with a grip. You lift the braid. Feel for the thread that holds the anger tightest. Find it. Whisper. It falls like a sigh from someone else's lungs. The girl exhales, shifts, smiles in her sleep. The braid loosens, not entirely, just enough to let her head tilt gently to the side, into rest. The hue changes, softer, dissolving. The man presses a coin into your hand. You try to refuse. He insists. You open your palm. It's not a coin. It's a thimble, worn smooth, inscribed with undo gently. You nod. Okurit. Step outside. Nara is waiting, crouched by a stone wall, tracing a spider web with her finger. Did it sing? Umad. It stopped. Oh. You walk in silence for a while. Then she says, I think I understand something. What's that? The world doesn't tangle on purpose. It just forgets to ask first. You return to town as the sun dips below the rooftops. It's not Tuesday, but it's watching, waiting. There's always another knot, always another story trying to braid itself too tightly. You set your scissors beside the bed, fold your clothes like a question answered softly, and drift to sleep, thinking not of blades, but of threads choosing at last to let go. Morning arrives like a letter you forgot you sent to yourself. Soft, folded in light, stamped with something that feels like closure but smells like rosemary. You don't rush to wake. Your body doesn't ask for urgency, only rhythm, only small movements, only the quiet work of continuing. The scissors rest beside your satchel. They're not shining, not humming, just waiting. Nara enters with a tray of bread, figs, and something she insists is tea adjacent. She sits beside you and says, mid-bite, there's one more. Person. She pulls a folded parchment from her pocket. Not sealed, just folded once, precise. On it, in a hand like upright vines, the roped chapel. We are knotted in prayer. Bring only stillness. You travel on foot. No roads, just direction. The world gets quieter as you move. Not emptier, just more focused. The birds sing less. The trees lean closer. Even the sun walks a little softer, and then, between two hills shaped like shoulders, you find it. A chapel made of rope, made together beam by beam. Its walls bend slightly with the wind, but never break. Inside, the pews are braided. The altar is looped. The air smells like candle wax and old promises. At the front, a figure kneels. They wear robes bound at the arms with lengths of faded cord. Their hair is tied back in hundreds of tiny knots, none larger than a thumbprint. You approach without sound. They speak before you do. You've brought them. You nod. Yes. And you know what they're for. You think. To cut what's been held too long. They turn. Their eyes are gray, like stone after rain. Then let's begin. They lead you behind the altar, to a wall strung with cords. Each one taut. Each one labeled. Not with names, but with verbs. Waited. Is hoped. Feared. Stayed. Promised. Some hang like harp strings. Others sag, heavy with meaning. These are the bindings we place on ourselves, the robed figure says. Not to restrain, but to remind. They gesture to one in the middle. Stayed. This one is mine. They reach up, unwind their sleeve. Beneath, a scar. Faint. Shaped like a question mark, too tired to curve fully. I stayed too long. In a vow I outgrew. They lift the scissors. Hold them out. Will you cut it for me? You take them. Not quickly. Not proudly. Just carefully. You reach for the cord. It doesn't fall. It vanishes. Softly, gratefully. The figure exhales. Something in the air exhales with them. You don't ask who they were. You don't need to. You've seen enough to know. Everyone ties something to themselves too tightly. And sometimes it takes a stranger's hand to loosen it. They bow. You bow. Then you and Nara leave without speaking. Back down the path. Past the hills. Into the town that now feels quieter in a kinder way. That night, you sit by the fire, Nara sketching a knot shaped like a story. You hold the scissors in your lap, and for the first time, you don't wonder where they'll take you next. You just know. Wherever there's tension, there will be release. Wherever something holds too long, something will listen. And wherever memory lingers, in hair, rope, or thread, you wake to the smell of rain before it falls. The clouds haven't opened yet, but the ground is already grateful. Outside, the cobblestones are quieter. The bakery hums a lower tune. Even the wind knocks once before entering the shutters. You stretch, not like a person in a rush, like a story that's near its last line. Nara is already at the window, reading something upside down. Apparently, someone started a rumor that your scissors can fix marriages. You raise an eyebrow. A mate? Only the ones that remember how to listen. She closes the book. Gans, we have a visitor. You walk outside. A woman stands in the square, middle-aged, incomposed. She holds a child by the hand and a lock of her own hair in the other. She says, "They don't need a cut. I need a memory trimmed down to size." You nod, sit her on a bench. The child watches, is curious, unafraid. You unwrap the scissors. Not the remembering pair, not the cutting pair. A third, new, unmarked, not yet named. The ones you made yourself, silently, 2 nights ago, shaped by practice, thought, and a certain Tuesday. You lift the lock of hair, touch it gently, asking permission. The strand answers softly. You cut. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make a crowded thought breathe again. She smiles. So does the child. Neither say thank you, but not from rudeness, just from understanding. Later, as the rain begins, you and Nara sit under the awning of the inn. The scissors rest in your lap. You're not asleep, just complete. She says, "Do you think it's over?" You consider, "No, but it doesn't need to be." And Tuesdays? You smile. Tuesdays will always ask. We just know how to answer now. You begin writing. A letter, addressed to no one, or maybe to whoever finds the shears one day in the back of a drawer, tucked inside a linen pouch, resting beside a folded list of names and verbs. It reads, "If you find these, be patient. They're not sharp unless listened to. They don't cut unless invited. And if it's Tuesday, breathe first, then begin." The fire crackles behind you. The rain thickens, a soft applause for endings done well. And as the town fades into puddles and reflection, you let your eyes drift shut to the sound of scissors no longer needed, but always ready.